They say everything can be replaced. They say every distance is not near. So I remember every face of every man who put me here. I see my light come shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. They say every man needs protection. They say that every man must fall. Still I swear I see my reflection somewhere behind these walls. Oh, I see my light come shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. Now yonder stands the man in this lonely crowd, a man who swears he's not to blame. All day long I hear him cry out loud, cry out that he's been praying. Oh, I see my light come shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. Oh, I see my light come shining, shining down from the west down to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Wrote that song, and I feel like the band really made it famous. For me, anyway, the band version is the how I became familiar with the song. And you know, Bob Dylan, one of the greatest American songwriters of all time, if
Yeah.
not the greatest.
Yeah. There's something
About being
about,
in prison. It's about prison.
aren't we all sort of in prison?
Exactly.
That's what we're going to be talking about today, man. So this is good. Of course, it's always on point. Happy anniversary to SpeakEasy. This is our 8th year of doing spiritual community together. And it's so beautiful to be part of your legacy and to have you be part of our legacy. We've seen each other through so many things in the last 8 years. We've had baby blessings. We've had marriages. We've had second marriages. We've had divorces. We've had people become ordained like Elizabeth. And, we got front row seats to this parade of love that moves through our community. Today, we're speaking about legacy. When we know our history, we can be better set up to understand our legacy. We have individual legacies. We also have communal legacies. And as a communal species, our communal legacy has shown us that we have been able to do some amazing and wonderful things. And as a human species, our communal legacy has also shown us that we are capable of doing some terrible, horrible things. And the good and the not so good both belong to us. It's our whole legacy. A Course in Miracles says that heaven is a decision that I must make. And I can either choose heaven or hell. I get to decide. I get to decide, am I going to extend heaven or hell for other people? And what's kind of odd to most of us is to see how we're still so invested in giving each other hell. Because our potential for love is so incredible. And I think we really must begin to understand our potential for love and to learn how to use our power for good, because we are the people who can put a man on the moon, which is audacious. And unfortunately, we are the people who can put children in cages. It's atrocious. And we can learn and have learned how to control fire, how to invent a wheel. And we have used these inventions to burn down villages and to run over people who don't share our common belief. We've invented the optical lens so that we could see out into the heavens and the stars. And we've used the same optical lens so that I can see. I'm as blind as a bat most of the time. And so we have this beautiful potential. We've created the printing press to help us communicate with each other. And then came the telegram and the telephone and the beeper. Wow, the beeper was like a major, mighty movement in our communications history. There was the computer, and then there was the cell phone. And these were ways that we sought to build bridges to connect with each other. We've gone from simply singing around the fire to being sung through radio waves. We've watched and witnessed our small little campfires expand into the entire world. And this has been done in a very short time. We went from radio and then albums. Remember albums? My first album was Meatloaf, Bad Outta Hell. 8-track cassettes, CDs, first cassettes and then CDs and then DVDs and digital downloads. And sometimes if we're really lucky, we'll come full circle and we'll just have the gift of being able to sit around the fire and hear each other sing to each other as we get to do today. We've invented electricity and the automobile, the calendar and the compass, which allow us to see where we are in the world and where we're hoping to end up and where we're headed. And sometimes with all of this ingenuity, we can still feel slightly strangely lost and confused with all of this ingenuity. Because these feelings are part of our legacy too. If we don't evolve internally, if we're not willing to ask, to look at the esoteric questions of humanity, all of the telescopes, all of the compasses will never get us any closer to the truth. So recently, because of the maiden voyage, I've been looking at our history, specifically the history of women and our myths and mythologies, our fables and our religions. And I stumbled upon something that I found to be really interesting. Like this woman named Lilith, who was apparently the first mortal woman in the Jewish mythology. She was the first wife of Adam. I had no idea that Adam had a first wife. She was part of our history. Apparently Lilith left Adam because she didn't want to be submissive. And after leaving Adam for not wanting to be submissive, she somehow became a demon. Now, back in mythology, we have a lot of people turning into demons, growing wings and horns. And it seems like, appropriate sci-fi for mythology. But I know that history repeats itself. And if you ask any modern man about his ex-wife, you will hear a story about how a woman became a demon. And if you really want to hear a story about a demon, you go ahead and ask that ex-wife about her husband, because hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn. And I know I sang my own broken gospel about my demon former husband after our marriage ended. And, however, in A Course in Miracles, we're students of love. We know it's love or a call for love. Like, we place no weight on demons. And we don't need to scare our children with tales of Satan when we have offered them front row seats to the dehumanizing hell that comes from when we forget that we belong to each other. So this first mortal woman was this demon named Lilith. And then there was Pandora, given to us by the Greeks, who also left a terrible legacy for us. And then, of course, there's Eve, total troublemaker and temptress, who, with the whole apple thing, got us kicked out of the VIP room of Eden. This is how it's been handed down to us. And we get to see what we want to take on, what we want to pass on to others, and what we want to pass on. Women being the lesser creature, the second created and the first to sin, is something I'm going to pass on. It's a hard no for me today. So if you do read the Bible, the next couple that comes along after Adam and Eve is Abraham and Sarah, and they don't really come off too well either. This is our legacy. In this section of the Bible, it's all rape and murder, descent, and on it goes through Genesis, which is the name of the first chapter of the Bible, which means beginning, and this is our beginnings. We basically have one bad apple after the next, according to the Bible. We come from some very fallible people who show us the worst of us. And although Genesis, all through it, we see our people asking God for mercy. And sometimes God seems to have mercy and sometimes not. And then at the end of Genesis, Joseph, the guy with the technicolor coat, he demonstrates mercy for his brother without really going to God. He just demonstrates it. His brothers are like, now that our dad's dead, Joseph, we were terrible to you. And now, that our father's not here, you're probably going to, wreak revenge on us. And he says, no, I love you. You're my brother. I don't care what you've done. I love you. And he shows them mercy. And that's the end of the chapter, the last book of Genesis. And it begins the beginning of us moving into Exodus. And Exodus is the second book of the Bible. Exodus means the road out. So we're moving out of the idea that God is the only one that can show mercy. And we're moving into the idea that mercy lives within us. And we immediately meet up with these stories because we have decided that mercy lives within us. We begin to meet up with these stories that demonstrate the best of us and not the worst of us. Actually, I guess it depends on how you see the stories, because when I'm working with the writers in our writers group, I tell them that a story has 1,000 windows, and depending on which window you peek through, you will see an entirely different kingdom. And this is the truth with many of our myths and Bible stories and parables. One such story is the beginning of Exodus, the Pharaohs and the Israelites. And it begins with this tribe of Abraham entering into Egypt, and they begin to grow and they multiply. And Egypt is basically like America at the time. It's this major promised land. It's like how America might seem to our Mexican immigrants. And so this tribe comes to Egypt to work hard and to make a better life for their children, to have a better legacy for their families. But there's this new king who takes the throne. He's the king of Egypt, and he doesn't really like the Israelites. In fact, he says, to his own people, like, these Israelites, like, they're dangerous people because there's so many of them, and we need to kill them. So we're going to work them to death. We're going to give them menial jobs, and we'll make them do the really hard stuff. And so hopefully we can just kill them off that way. But the thing happens with the Israelites is that they only grow stronger. And this is very upsetting to the king. And so he calls the midwives. And he tells the midwives, when you are delivering the Israelite babies, take the boy babies and throw them in the river. So you might be thinking, wow, why did they just throw the boy babies in the river? Well, the king, he didn't just not like the Israelites, but he really didn't have any care for girl babies. He didn't care enough for them so much that he was like, they're not even worth killing. So now we have these two midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, and they're at this crossroads. Have you ever been at a crossroads when one person's telling you to do something and it goes completely against the grain of your being? Because their king is asking them to direct orders. He's giving them to kill baby boys. But they're midwives who have no doubt have come to their profession honestly and are committed to being the ones who draw out life, not snuff life out. So how can they go against the truth of their being? It could seem like they're in between a rock and a hard place. They decide that they are going to go with their inner compass. They struck a covenant with their truth, their own inner compass, and they show mercy and not massacre on these baby boys. But when the king finds out, he calls them back and he says, hey, why are you not killing the babies? It sounds like a Borat film at this point. He's like, I gave you a simple job. How can you mess this up? Like, two knuckleheads, like, just throw the babies in the water. It's not that big a deal. The reason he's so invested in it is because he is afraid of these new people. He's afraid because these people seem so strong, and he's afraid that they will infiltrate his people, and he doesn't want to mix things. He wants to keep things separate. But God loves to put cream in her coffee and loves to put chocolate in her milk. God loves to mix her palate. And we see this demonstrated over and over again in Genesis with the Tower of Babel, when the people were trying to build a tower, a nation, kind of like an Aryan nation of just people who thought like them, who spoke like them, to God. And God comes down and scatters them and gives them all different languages. And she says to them, now figure it out. Because you know what? It's really easy to love people who talk like you and think like you. And it's really hard to love people who are different than you. But God loves mixing her paints. And so we had better figure this out as well. I saw this video recently this week about a part of our history in regards to mixing our paints, which was a story about Ruby Bridges, which made me think of another Ruby Bridge that I'll tell you about later. But the first Ruby Bridges, she came into our awareness in 1960 as a 6-year-old girl who walked through the doors of William Fritz Elementary School in New Orleans. She became one of the first African-American students to attend an all-white elementary school. This little 6-year-old, how brave for this child to walk on water for the rest of us and set this precedence of what courage could look like. How brave for her mom to trust the world with her most precious possession, her precious child. It's said that her mom would send her to school, and then she came home, she would pray from the time that she left to the time that she got home. The law was that the school was to be desegregated, but the governor of Louisiana said, no, we're going to keep it segregated because that's what the people want. But still, Ruby's mom placed the child in the car along with US deputies that escorted her on her ride to school. And despite what the law, the governor, the crowd of angry people said, they went. You know, Course in Miracles tells us that when we're healed, we're not healed alone. Legions upon legions will receive the gifts that you receive when you are healed. Healed from what? What do we need to get healed from? It says that all sickness is separation. So how do we make ourselves separate? We do it just the way the Pharaoh did it. You know, we try through all means possible to separate ourselves from the other guy, and if we can, kill him. Separation, segregation, VIP rooms, judgments, castrations, annihilations, amputations. Choose your sword. You know, just make sure that we're not sitting together. You know, just make sure that you're separate from anything that you see as different, and see if you can build a wall between us. So back to the king, the Pharaoh. He sees these midwives who are not killing the babies, and he says, why are you not killing the babies? And the midwives tell the Pharaoh, gosh, these Israelite ladies, like, they are lively, like they're birthing their babies before we even get there, which may or may not be the truth. But it's the way that they got out of killing babies. And this noble act, according to the Bible, allowed the midwives to be blessed by God. And God bestowed on them their own families. So again, this is an interesting point because it's the first time that we see that women get families, because prior to this, only men got families. You know, this guy begot, and this guy begot, and this guy begot. And now we have a moment in the second chapter of the Bible where women are being blessed with their own families through their right of consciousness. So since the midwives were not able to do the job, Pharaoh calls on the whole community. He sends out a command to all the people everywhere. And he says, throw the Israelite babies in the Nile River. Not the girl babies. They're not worth it. At this time that this is going on, this young mother, who's one of the descendants of Levi, who's one of the descendants of Jacob, who's one of the descendants of Abraham. And this is important, and I'll tell you why in a minute. She's giving birth to an Israelite baby, and he is beautiful, like so beautiful. And the mother is so afraid of the beauty of this baby boy that she hides the baby for 3 months. Have you ever had anything that you found to be so innocent and perfect and pure that you were afraid to share it with the world, that you just wanted to hide it away? If so, then you live in the legacy of this Israelite mother. So she can no longer safely hide the baby after 3 months. And what she decides to do is she builds a baby boat, basically, made out of reeds and tar. And she places the child in the basket, and she sets the child adrift on the Nile River. And this is the same river that everyone's supposed to drown all the Hebrew babies in. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine bringing your child to the border and sending them across the waters without you? Can you imagine having no other option than to trust God and the waters and the goodness of humanity? To carry your child to safety? To give your child away so that they might have a better life or a life at all? That must not have been easy. So, but she's resting in the strength of her legacy. She's resting in the strength of her ancestors. She's resting in the living legacy of Abraham, who also took his son to the altar to sacrifice him. Remember that crazy story? And she must have heard it because she's only 3 generations away. And Abraham's following God's direction and takes his kid to the altar. And then God says it has mercy on him. So maybe, like Ruby's mother, maybe this Israelite mother is praying to God, like, show mercy on my child too. And she places her baby in the Nile River. Now, the baby has an older sister who's in no danger whatsoever because she's a girl and she's a sister, so basically worthless. And she follows the baby basket and she sees the Pharaoh's daughter coming out, the princess coming to the water to bathe, and the princess sees the baby. Now, if the princess is to obey her father, she must press the baby to the water. That's the command. After all, the king is her father, the king who has declared that all Hebrew babies be tossed in the river. So we hold our breath a moment to see what she will do with the little sister as she stares on. And she's stunned to see that this princess draws the baby out of the water. And the princess looks at the baby and she says, this must be a Hebrew baby. And she holds the baby with care. And so the sister runs to the princess and she says, do you want me to find a woman to nurse that baby? What a smart little kid. And the princess says, yeah. And so the little girl goes running home to her mom. And she brings her mom to the princess, and the princess places the baby back into the mother's arms. Can you imagine giving your child away and then having it returned to you? So this past week, I saw some footage of a video of one of the children that we separated at the borders, our borders, the American borders. The child was returned to her mother. It didn't happen overnight like this baby in the story in the Bible. It happened after 6-7 months after being separated from her mother. That embrace broke my heart. If you get to see it, bring the tissues. That's our legacy that kept that child from her mother's embrace for 7 months. And that's our legacy that made sure that child was returned. It's very complicated, this human thing. Something we all have to grapple with if you're interested in being demonstrations of mercy. So the princess tells the mom, hey, take this child and nurse him for me, and I'll pay you very well to do this. Now the mom gets her baby boy back, but now she's also getting paid. Paying a mother to help support her to raise her own child? How radical. How come that idea didn't catch on? Because I could have used a little help. So later on, when the child gets older, the mother brings the child back to the princess, and the princess names the child Moses because he was drawn out of the water. So these midwives, this Pharaoh's daughter, this child, Ruby, her mom, they didn't listen to the law. They listened to the love. They made a covenant with the love, and they let the love lead them. They tossed the news, the telescopes, the calendars and compasses, and trusted their hearts, because if they had looked at the telescopes, the news, the calendars, the compasses, they would have seen it's not a good time for faith, my friend. But when it comes to fear, it's never a good time for faith. So the other ruby bridge that I wanted to talk to you about is not actually a little girl, but an actual bridge that was ruby red because it was soaked in blood. It was this bloodbath that happened 5 years after Ruby walked through the doors of that segregated school, after she walked through that angry crowd. And I wondered, when I thought about that second bridge, I wondered if watching the courage of that little ruby bridges walk into the white school, I wondered if it wasn't maybe part of the fire that helped to light John Lewis as he walked the second bridge. 5 years later, on March 7th, 1965, John Lewis helped Martin Luther King lead a march from Selma to Alabama to Montgomery, along with 600 other nonviolent protesters marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. And they were met and attacked by Alabama state troopers, and Lewis ended up with a fractured skull that almost killed him. And the blood that was shed that day birthed the second Ruby Bridge. It was horrifying to the point that it was called Bloody Sunday. 2 words that should never sit next to each other. It was also the day that was credited, though, for helping pass the 1965 Voting Rights Act. This is a landmark piece of federal legislation in the United States that prohibits racial discrimination in voting. You know, or you should know, that our country is based on racial discrimination, especially around voting, when Blacks were literally not allowed to vote unless they could pay or pass a test. Pay and pass a test. And because they've been systematically suppressed up until that point and continually excluded from education, this was a surefire way to ensure that all men were not created equal. But I wonder if John Lewis crossed into that angry mob. I wonder if he didn't think or have more conviction because of the steps that were taken by that 6-year-old. You see, we have this legacy. We have this legacy that's hard to grapple with as humans. This legacy of love where every single step in love serves everyone and every fear annihilates everyone. Every word of kindness, every time you speak up when someone is being knocked down, every time you remind another that you're better than this, that we're better than this, all of that helps to pave a path to peace. We cannot live by the lies that demonize and demoralize our brothers and sisters. There are no demons here, my friends, not even Lilith. We're all walking on the bridge today. Every action we take is accounted for. Every time we see our brother as ourselves, we make the choice for heaven or hell. When we're healed, we're not healed alone. Legions upon legions will receive the gifts that you receive when you are healed, when you recognize you're not separate. Healing is the recognition that we belong to each other, that I'm one with you, that you're one with me. We are that fearless child heading to school, and we are that U.S. deputy that escorts her to school that day, and we are the mother who stays home and pray, and we are the king who's in fear of losing his power, and we are the noble midwives, and we are the sisters that look after our brothers. We're the Black man kneeling, and we're the officer swinging the fear baton. And all of that life is in us. We are each other's legacy, and we get to decide, do we take down the enemy and think of ways of beating and besting him? Do we go for more bloody Sundays? Or do we take in the enemy? Literally take in the enemy and raise him as our own. When you look back on this story, as you look into your hearts, depending on what window you want to peek through, you could see it 1,000 different versions. But really, it always comes down to love or fear. Love extends, fear amputates. It's not brain surgery. I don't need to pray to God to have mercy on me or you today, because of course God is nothing but mercy. But I need to pray that you will have mercy on me and pardon me as I pass by, and that I will have mercy on you, and that I will pardon you when you pass by, even if I don't like where you're headed. In the end, we each meet this momentous moment where we decide, are we going to move in mercy or are we going to move in massacre? That's our legacy that we get to decide. Heaven is a decision that we must make. So how are we going to cross the bridge? And that's the word.
Amen. A women.
Hey, women.
I can't believe the news today. I can't close my eyes and make it go away. How long must we sing this song? How long? 'Cause tonight we can be as one tonight. Broken bottles under children's feet, bodies strewn across the dead end street. but I won't heed the battle call. It puts my back up against the wall. Sunday, bloody Sunday, Sunday, bloody Sunday, Sunday, bloody Sunday, Sunday, bloody Sunday. And the battle's just begun. There's many lost, but tell me who has won? The trenches dug within our hearts, and mothers, children, brothers, sisters torn apart. Sunday, bloody Sunday, Sunday, bloody Sunday, Sunday, bloody Sunday, Sunday, bloody Sunday. How long, how much must we sing this song? How long, how long? 'Cause tonight we can be as one tonight. Sunday, bloody Sunday, Sunday, bloody Sunday. Wipe the tears from your eyes. Oh, wipe your tears away. Wipe your tears away. Wipe your tears away. Oh, wipe your bloodshot eyes. And it's true, we are immune when fact is fiction and TV reality. And today the millions cry. We eat and drink while tomorrow they die. The real battle's just begun. To claim the victory Jesus won. Sunday, bloody Sunday, Sunday, bloody Sunday, Sunday, bloody Sunday, Sunday, bloody Sunday.
Woo! Yeah. Wow. Did you know you were singing that today?
I didn't. I just gave myself a hot flash.
Well, you set us all on fire, so you deserve a hot flash.
They're almost constant nowadays. I don't. They went away for a while, and now, whoo, just burning up inside here.
Woo! It was awesome. Thank you so much. I didn't know the words to that song.
How perfect.
I know, so perfect. You just channel, man. I just hope you know that. You are just channeling, and it's incredible for us to get to experience that.
Thank you.
So the healed mind doesn't plan. That's what happens.